Live from the Talking Joe Studios. It's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey. It is me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe. We are live and direct at the time of recording at any rate. If you're watching it later, we will not be live. So we've got another special episode today. We are going to be looking at this bad boy here. It's the G.I. Joe 40th anniversary special that was published just last month by IDW, and is a remarkable issue in that it is a recreation of the issue 21, the famous Silent Interlude issue, but not by the original artist, but by a stream of guest artists from the ranks of the G.I. Joe kind of legends, I'd say. But I'm not going to be doing it alone. As always, I will be joined by my co-host, Tim, who I will play a jingle for if I can do it quickly enough. Here it is.
I really want to talk Joe with you. It's a real American Tim. American Tim.
There he is. And
hello, Mark, and hello, listeners and viewers.
Very good. How are you today, Tim?
I am well. I'm ready to talk Joe.
Excellent. Good to see that you are prepared. We are joined by two very special guests. Two of the 22 plus artists from the book. Probably closer to 25 if we start. Anyway, let's not get into semantics. They're here. And first of all, I will introduce someone whose jingle I forgot to load in. Woohoo! He'll make you famous. It's Billy Penn.
Howdy. How's it going? Yeah.
Welcome
Very
back.
good.
I'm ready to talk.
I think between the three of us, they've sold at least 3 copies. That's wonderful to see. Commerce in action. You joining us from Florida today, Billy?
I am. I've got the back door open on the garage and the garage door open. So this is all Florida UV light.
Wow. Live and direct Florida lighting. And slightly less cold than the start that we had the last time we spoke to you.
Oh, yes.
Live from the Silent Castle, where, of course, we talked about your live action recreation. Well, yeah, your stop motion recreation of the Silent Interlude issue.
Good old quarantine, yeah.
Also joining us today is the real American hero, Supremo. It's Robert Atkins, who I thought, if I've got enough time today, I'll make a jingle for. And guess what, folks? I didn't have enough time, but here's what the jingle would have been. It would have been Rabbit by Chaz and Dave. So, Rabbit, Ucha. It's Robert Atkins. Hiya, Robert.
I love it. I got the live version. That's fantastic.
Yeah, next time you're on, I'll have recorded something, I'm sure.
Nice. Yeah, sounds great.
Excellent. So, where are you joining us from today? Is it in the region of Georgia?
Yes, Savannah, Georgia. Yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Cool. With real Savannah sunshine pouring in through a window.
Robert,
yeah, definitely.
Robert, are there more Transformers behind you than G.I. Joe figures? And also, why?
Because, I mean, there's like all things 80s, really, just in my studio behind me. There's like a wall right here, but then what you can't see is everything on that side of the studio. So right behind me, I can never get this right. Right behind me,
I'm gonna do a.
And then what you don't see is everything that I see as I draw. So everything on that side of my studio is what I look at while I draw, and that there's more Joe stuff that way.
You could counter by asking me why there's of all of all of the one toys behind me, zero of them are G.I. Joe.
Right. Well, there you go.
I'll say something similar. You should see the 900 G.I. Joe figure.
Yeah, I know.
Just out of camera.
Right.
I actually find it very funny to host a G.I. Joe podcast, occasional video cast, and behind me is not any G.I. Joe. I find that funny. Billy, is there any cool Joe treasure in those Tupperware bins behind you? And also, why not?
Oh gosh.
Oh wow, we're on the move.
Going on a tour.
We're on the move. I got a snowcat.
Okay.
And some figures. My actors. I got some Studley toys in here.
Okay.
Not on display though. This is literally an 80s basket.
Okay.
From the
80s
80s.
basket.
2 Joe
Yeah.
arcade vehicles.
Yeah, it's full of G.I. Joe figures.
I think you're and a Joe shirt, and Mark's wearing a Joe shirt. I think Billy and Mark are winning this.
Winning the
competition.
t-shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
My display is lackluster though.
Well, at first I was
My-
worried that you were trapped in a storage closet and that you were like live casting from there.
Right.
I did do a Zoom meeting last summer in a closet at the family's house. The acoustics were great because it was carpeted and there were lots of like women's like. I was in a closet in the guest room, right? So it's like women's office clothing,
Yeah.
back from the dry cleaner. But I have done at least one Zoom meeting over the pandemic, just like sitting on the carpeted floor in a closet with the door closed.
I thought the punchline was going to be they open the closet and they go, Tim, why are you wearing my clothes? And they're like, the acoustics.
The acoustics. Yeah.
It's not what it looks like.
That's where you should sing your jingles, like from just playing that.
We do tell our students, particularly in the last 2 years, right? Like, okay, students, these are college animation students. You should come to school and record your dialogue in the sound room. But if you can't, use a closet at home. And several of our students actually did record their dialogue in their rooms with a blanket over them and their microphone. So it's real.
Yeah.
Let's talk about G.I. Joe.
Yeah, see, I hadn't finished sort of trying to have a real good look at some of Robert's gems there in the background. So there's a nice big Snake Eyes head, the hawk statue. I think that's one on my list to look out for. I've got you can't see it, but I've got the Crimson Guards. I think it's from the same collection.
Yeah.
What?
I'm seeing a lot of Marvel and not a lot of any other publisher.
Well, this is the
That's just the Marvel shelf.
Okay. Yeah, there's bookshelves that kind of line that wall too. There's there's like right up here is like the Turtle collection, and then at the bottom there's a lot of Valiant and Dark Horse, but this whole shelf is Marvel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Robert, since you've worked for IDW, you like Turtles. Can you tell me why more people don't read the Amazing Ninja Turtles ongoing comic?
It's so good. I mean, Tom Waltz has been like phenomenally consistent with that whole run. He just gets it.
Every artist that they get on that series and all the spin-offs, they're different, but they're all great. And having one person color the entire run gives it this consistency, and it's this wonderful combination of movie, toy, old show, current show, old comic, baked into a delicious turtle pie.
Soup.
I think
boiled into a delicious
best soup. Yeah. I think it's the best ongoing, like consistent series IDW's ever done, like hands down. Because it's had such a consistent voice throughout it, and by all means it's had some story arcs that are better than others, but overall, if you take it as a whole, it's been the most consistent, because every other run has had it's been rebooted, or it's had multiple writers or I don't know, editorial staff even come and go, but I think the Turtles has hands down been the most consistent, and they've just had such a clear voice from the beginning. So yeah, I've loved it.
when people come into my store and they see the black and white original collections and then the current series sort of as the hardcover and as the softcover, which are different formats, different reading order formats, I will say to people, I didn't like this comic for the first 10 issues, but it clicked with the third arc. So
yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Give it a chance.
Yeah, but then once it hit that stride, it just really takes off, and it's phenomenal.
So Billy, Mark, why aren't you reading Turtles? They're only 127 issues.
Exactly.
Plus 50 spin-off issues to catch up on.
That's it.
Yeah, it's all the other good things that I want to read and haven't got time to read as well. You know, my reading part. You know, my reading pile is my room essentially.
I did get my free comic book day version. I'm all caught up.
So that issue, the free comic book day Turtles issue, I think is roughly issue 126 and a half or 127 and a half, setting up the next arc.
Oh, me?
I was gonna say,
Billy?
I think at IDW, like Larry Hama's still doing G.I. Joe, and Eastman still has, you know, his toe in the turtle water, the turtle pool.
Turtles.
So that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a good time to be a Joe fan. It's a good time to be a Turtles fan.
Yeah, that's true.
Very true.
I'm a little sad for My Little Pony Friendship is Magic fans, because I think that has all ended, right? Like the show's over, the comic that continued the show is over, and there's a new comic, and they've started over, like a new continuity.
As far as I understand it,
and the show, I don't know how long the show went, but I think the comic did seasons 10 and 11, something like that. And if you know, that could be something like The Simpsons, where it just keeps going forever, but maybe a toy company feels differently. You know, no, we have to change it up again for the kids. You know, every 3 years, Transformers starts over, right? With the toys, which is not something I would necessarily do if they were asking me.
Okay.
I mean, I think that you could do with any of these properties. I think you could do a classics line. You know, something that is obviously successful. Yes, that demographic grows up, but they don't grow out of loving that property. So whatever is successful with that demographic, do a classic line with that demographic, do variations, do whatever, but keep it. Why not keep it? And then, you know, revamp or reboot or do something and try something new by all means, but there's no reason to just throw that out and say, we're never doing it again. You know, I don't understand that.
Yeah,
or redo classic things.
Redo them. Yeah. The brand's been going 40 years. You're able to, you know, you've got that audience who their peak period is a specific year from 40 years ago right up till today, really, and so for all of those people, there's going to be a particular era, particular character, particular art team for the comics, whatever that is their sort of golden pinnacle. We were talking to Richard Starkings, and he had a theory, which was that whatever you're reading between the ages of 9 and 11, pretty much, that is the thing that sort of cements for you and becomes your ultimate thing. It's good if the quality of that thing is also good, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the best thing ever for everybody, but it might just end up being the best thing for you. So it's interesting, these sort of the kind of aspect of nostalgia and where we were when we were encountering these things that play such a big part for us. So bringing it back to issue 21, where were you, who were you when you first encountered the issue?
Billy, you go first.
Okay, the original 21, I'm pretty sure it was being passed around on the schoolyard in my classroom amongst us kids who were like, have you seen this one? And that would have been after it had come out. Maybe someone found it in a 50-cent box, or maybe it was a quarter bin back then. But yeah, just circulating around like, oh, if you like this one, you should try this one. I think when I really started collecting, like monthly, making it a religious pilgrimage to the spinner rack, I think 85 was new, the sound effects issue, and then I came to 21 after that. It's really just kind of a timeline where you're just kind of plugging in the holes. You're reading it.
Yeah, out of order. If you're starting at 85 and then you're going back to the boxes and going, okay, there's an issue I've got, not got, and slowly piecing it all together, right? Yeah, that's kind of how I encountered a lot of the early issues. Like, just
it would have been a back issue find.
And your books 3 and 4 had all those recaps and cover galleries, which helped and teased and confused.
And recap, your book 3 also had a silent issue, which my friends and I were blown away by.
Robert, where were you when you found 21?
See, for me, like, my introduction to G.I. Joe was definitely the cartoon first, and then the toys, and then the comics last. Because I didn't even really get into comics until kind of late middle school, early high school. I mean, I definitely would see them in the gas station corner store, but we didn't have a comic book shop where we were at. So this was like late 80s, early 90s, before I was even really introduced to comics. So I didn't even know that there was a G.I. Joe comic book, which is kind of crazy to think, being associated with the property. But so I loved the property growing up, but I was more into that side of it with the cartoon and toys. And then when I came across the Marvel collected editions is when I first read it. And then that was my first, the very first time I read any kind of like silent issue where there wasn't any dialogue. And I know that there's been other comics maybe in the past that have done this, whether or not it was for a full issue or for, I had seen pages that didn't have any dialogue on the page, and that impacted me also. But for it to be, this was definitely the first time there was an entire comic, and it came by surprise because even though it had been out at this point for a long time, years and years,
You're talking about like the Marvel collections from like the early 2000s, is that right?
Yeah,
the ones
exactly.
with the J. Scott Campbell covers.
Yeah, that was the very first time I had ever read this comic. Was like decades after it had come out. So I was just very unfamiliar with it because I started working on G.I. Joe in 2005, 2006, and I had known that there was a G.I. Joe comic by then, but I was just starting to kind of collect them in back issue and collected edition kind of a thing. And so just as I picked it up, and that was the first, and it kind of came as a surprise. So I was really late to the game, and but by then it was kind of interesting because I had gone through school and I had kind of studied comic storytelling, and so it really hit me in a more educated view than as a kid, right? And so I had a love for the property, but I was able to really study it in the nuances of like a more educated point of view by that point. So I really, really appreciated the storytelling aspect of it. So that's why it hit me kind of so hard, I think. But yeah.
But yeah, sort of encountering it all those years later, I guess, is quite a different dynamic to reading it at the time, because like that reveal of the last page of like, who's that? Who is this white ninja? Why has he got the same tattoo? What's going on? It's less of an unknown at that point because we've got
that, because I didn't get that reveal. I'd always known that they were associated. It's like I didn't get that reveal, so I'm sad that I missed out on that impact, that youthful impact of it. But I can appreciate the storytelling reveal, visually.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that grows over the years, is that you can realize quite what a feat was achieved with the project, and the strength of the storytelling.
Mark, where were you when you found issue 21? And was it an American printing of it?
I first encountered it as the Marvel UK Action Force weekly reprint of 21, which was printed slightly out of order. So they were kind of started, pretty much with that like that early Zartan issue is how they kind of kicked off the American reprints, because you can understand why they did it, because it's a big bombastic storyline, and also it was tying into the toys that were then coming into the UK. But 21 was such a strong issue that obviously they didn't want to just skip past it. They wanted to include it in some way, so they created this sort of bookends story, which was illustrated by a very young Brian Hitch, and contained some dialogue to try and fit it in into the kind of overall story that was being told. So I encountered it, I guess, over a space of a few weeks, because it was being chunked up into smaller segments as well. So that was how I knew it for quite a long time.
Did it occur to you that most of it was wordless and that was unusual?
Yeah, I think I would have recognized that. It was probably less striking that it was so wordless, because it was bookended by this beginning and end sequence, and it was also part of an anthology which contained other issues which did have words as well. So it was less striking that it was an entire issue that was wordless, because it was a smaller part of a wider issue. And it might, I'm just wondering, it might have actually been until the Marvel reprints that I then encountered it in kind of a closer to the original format. But yeah, I tended to destroy my Action Force comics, take them apart and then staple the American stories together, because I couldn't be doing with the anthology. I just wanted to get the whole story all in one go.
For readers, listeners who are curious about this reference to these Marvel reprints, what IDW now publishes as classic G.I. Joe volumes 1 through 5, Marvel initially prepped and published as G.I. Joe volumes 1 through 5 in 2001, 2002, 2003. And IDW took all of the same files, made like one tiny change to all 5 of them. But that's what those are. Actually, you can't quite see them, but they're four of them are behind me, the Marvel printings.
What about you, Tim?
My story sort of splits the difference between Robert and Billy, because my brother and I were first into the cartoon, and then the toy, and then the comic. And I got into comics the summer before 6th grade, which I consider late, although I can see compared to some people it's not. And we bought issue 90 when it was new. And over the next 3 years, we filled in all of the gaps, whether it was with second printings and tales of, or first printings. And I think we were at a convention in Washington, D.C., and I think there was a dealer, this won't mean anything to you, sort of on the right.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we got issue 21. This is 1990, 1991. I think we got it for between $12 and $22 at a time when I think it was selling for 5 or 6 more than that, or that's what the price was, but you could do some bargaining. And we were supremely aware that we were getting it for a deal. And we hadn't known what the cover promised, but we'd seen the cover reprinted, here and there in a catalog or whatever. And I don't remember reading it and being sort of gobsmacked by it, but I remember years later in college, I took a storyboarding class, storyboarding for feature animation, with a guy who'd worked and was working in the industry in Los Angeles, and everything he drew on the whiteboard was wordless rectangular panels, as if he was writing and drawing a scene in an animated feature film. And that's when sort of story was really clicking for me, that story is separate from script. Story is separate from character. Like when we talk about storytelling, on this podcast, we're talking about how you translate to the audience what is happening and why, and it is separate from drawing, and it is separate from the script, and but all of those things feed into it. And so later, when I was rereading 21, particularly when Larry Hama came and presented it at my school for some of my students, because we brought him out to sign at my store and also to talk at my school. The story in this is so clear, right? Like, that's the magic of this. It's a great story. The story doesn't need dialogue because all the choreography, characters, and finger quotes, camera angles, it's all crystal clear.
Seconded.
Yeah, and to be honest, so I don't know, I'm sure we'll get into that, but that was kind of the unique challenge of redrawing this. I'm sure that's where we're going to go with the discussion, but it was when they first presented us with it, I was immediately excited just to get a chance to work on something that I knew was going to be a seminal, important issue, and people were going to get excited about seeing. But then immediately I was like, well, it's already well done. I was like, I wasn't, and also it's not like we had an insight into how other artists were approaching their pages. It was very much like, this is your page, go. And I was like, well, are we supposed to change compositions? And they're like, do whatever.
Wow.
They were like, generally, the composition is what it is. Like, we want the story to be the same. Obviously, don't change the story, but do your thing. And we're like, so we really didn't get a lot of direction. When you say
we, did you immediately start talking to other artists, or you mean sort of later in thinking about it?
I wasn't told what other artists were involved.
No.
I don't know, Billy, were you? Yeah, we weren't told who, so we couldn't reach out to each other to find out how extremely people were changing their composition. So it was really kept very quiet. I was surprised even when other artists were starting to show their pages before it was announced or before it was coming out, or even that they were announcing that they were a part of it. So 'cause I wasn't sure how, like, NDA wise, like how hush hush it was going to be. And I was reluctant to show my page until it was actually on shelves, even though a few had shown their page. But in general, I think some pages I can hands down see why certain shots were adjusted, and like on Billy's page especially, I think they make phenomenal sense. Why to move a camera angle this way or that. And I think in some pages, we can get into it a little deeper. Like on my page, there was very little reason to change much. So, but it was an interesting challenge. Hands down, it was an interesting challenge because of exactly what Tim was mentioning. The storytelling is so clear throughout. I mean, it really stands up, and it has. There's been so many, reviews of this book over the years, because it stands up so well.
Yeah, Billy, did you sort of encounter the same sort of process that when you were told about it, you thought, do I keep it? How faithful do I keep it? How much do I change it? Did you ask those kind of questions as well?
In my head, I mean, to my wife when she's cooking, she's like, okay, whatever. No, I mean, I love hearing from Robert, like his Talking Joe episode. I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. Like, coming from an education background and getting his assignment, like, oh, the timing's perfect, and now the timing's not. And no, he just said everything that I completely agree with. I'm tickled. Yeah, I think the first email was like, shoot us some pages you'd like to draw. And I thought, oh, well, I think I sent a list of like 5 that I thought would be killer. Yeah. And I think they shot back with one of those. And I said, sure, why not? But yeah, like, I'm scratching my head. Like, I don't want to say no. I don't not want to be a part of this. But then I'm like, that issue's perfect.
Yeah.
Having made the movie in stop motion form, made the book make even more sense because Snake Eyes pulls his grenade and throws it. Oh, and in Robert's in Robert's page, but that's really kind of an Indiana Jones type move, like a Raiders move.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's why that was my favorite page, and definitely one that I wanted to do. I think I did the same thing. I sent back 3 pages and 3 or 4 pages, and this one was kind of secretly my favorite, or the one I definitely wanted to do because of that. It was like hands down. That's how I describe it too. It's just that Indiana Jones move.
But I was thinking, like, why doesn't he shoot the guy? And then, like, when I made the stop motion movie, I'm like, oh, that's Snake Eyes' Uzi that fell. Like, he's Uzi-less behind enemy lines. And I've called Sensei Larry Hama an action cartographer, but everything's there. It was like someone handed me a map of the United States and they were like, do you want to redraw this map? And I'm like, yeah. I don't know what I can add, but sure.
Yeah, when Larry in many G.I. Joe issues, this happened also in G.I. Joe Origins. Mark, I always forget. Is it 19 or 20? What's the wordless issue?
Oh, yeah, you stumped me as well.
Wait,
yeah, it's around about then, isn't it?
Wait,
it's like...
all right, hold on. It's in the back of this. 19. It's in the back of this Silent Interlude hardcover. A previous wordless issue where Snake Eyes goes on this mission, Hama is very much keeping track of sort of how many clips of ammo Snake Eyes has. And I think this even happened did this happen in issue 250 at the end of Rise of the Rashikaje, where someone throws a sword or an Uzi or a clip up, and anyway, Hama's keeping track of this stuff. That it's not sort of the lazy action movie or comic book trope of sort of unlimited ammo or 3 or 4 clips. Like, no, it's 3 clips and we've lost 2, right? No, his Uzi's gone, so what weapon does he have left? Also, it's funny, right? Because if you think about it, a ninja should be able to jump out of the way, like it takes a couple seconds to like pull up a baseball out of your pocket and like do something to the top of it and like underhand it to someone up the stairs from you. But that's not funny. If they're like, wait, I've got a side, let me just knock it back to you, right? It's like, no, this isn't a comic for children, but this is a comic for entertainment.
I'll give the Red Ninja credit for like bad lighting. Maybe he thought it was a baseball.
Yeah. It's like, I got this.
So what's interesting, I guess, sort of we started talking about this a little bit, is that everyone's got their kind of own approach to how they tackled the page, because they were allowed to, as you found out. So there's the kind of the scale of just subtly refining it, sort of putting own twists of style onto the page, versus wholesale just going out and doing something very different, changing the compositions, changing
which I was
layouts.
Surprised we saw that.
There's a famous artist who made a bunch of changes.
And
I don't know how. Let me ask a different question, Billy and Robert. Did you? Yeah. I might write an entire blog post just on that one page. Yeah. Because I have many feelings about it. but I will save that.
I'm still waiting on part 2.
It's done. I need to. I'm posting it today.
Okay.
I kind of wanted to wait till Tuesday because the 3-day weekend I won't get any traffic, but I may just I need to add 2 JPEGs and then it's done. Spoiler alert, it's going to be a part 3. So Billy and Robert, did you draw your page from a comic or graphic novel you had? Did IDW send you a like JPEG or a PNG or a PDF of the page, or did they send you the actual Larry Hama sketch layout, the breakdown?
Oh no, yeah, they just send us a PDF of the full issue.
As the way that they print it now in color, or finished. Okay, because one of the things that I was wondering is one of the reasons why I like this book, the 30th anniversary of Silent Interlude, is that it has Silent Interlude, and then it has photocopies of Hama's of pages 2 through 22, not page 1, of Hama's original breakdowns, right? Like before he sent off those pencils to get finished inked, he made photocopies and he kept them the whole time. And I imagine one might approach redrawing a page from this story a little differently if they were working from these slightly sketchy black and white actual breakdowns versus the penciled, inked, colored, printed version, like a fully finished comic.
Pre and post the Leola effect.
Yeah, because part of drawing the page is part of the original finishing of the page in 1984 is reacting to the looseness of Hama's breakdowns. And I was sort of hoping that, like the purest version of this, I was sort of hoping that all the artists were provided with the actual breakdowns.
No, we weren't. I could see how that. I think given more time, that could have been a more interesting storytelling experiment. But when they approached us with it, they wanted a pretty fast turnaround. I think they're like, hey, just, we have a great idea. How fast can you get this done? Basically, it was kind of like, it's just one page. Can we get this in 2 weeks? I think was the initial deadline. And then, which depending on people's schedules, like they were either on another book or a lot of us have full-time jobs and we're doing other things. And so, even fitting that one page in, I think was difficult for some. I think I probably got mine in about 2.5, 3 weeks. And I was like, I am so sorry. I've got to be the last person turning the page in. They're like, oh no, you are not. And I was like, all right, I guess. But I don't even know who else. Yeah, like I said, we didn't have any communication with each other. I think that would have been awesome if they had set up some kind of a forum or some kind of Discord or, some kind of Slack or something for us to communicate. That would have been awesome. I would have loved that camaraderie, this experience to talk together, show each other our art, show each other how we're adapting it. That could have been a fun experience. If we'd have been able to see the layouts and work from those, that could have been really cool. I don't have that book. I would, if I had that, I probably would have worked from that instead. But yeah, they just provided a PDF.
Also, something that's now publicly available that only really in the last few months is the scans that that Gene Park made available of his copy of the original art, which is what's on the right of the screen here. So that's I wonder how many people working on the book were able to look that up and reference it, because it hasn't been available for a huge amount of time, so it might not be that people realized it was even there. So
I think probably not.
Robert, Billy, art approach question. Did you have the PDF on one side of your screen and you're drawing on the right? Did you make it very, very light blue and print out a copy onto Bristol and draw on top of it? How did you, were you drawing freehand on a new piece of paper? Did you draw digitally? How did you actually make your piece of art?
Billy, you can go first.
I was freehand on paper.
Just looking at the PDF that IDW sent you, or your printed comic?
Yes, I've got so many copies of this issue. I scratched it out and then I printed blue lines.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me.
Mark's gonna go full screen in a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did. All right, so the blue there is from your printer, not from a blue pencil.
Right. Those are.
You did a digital thumbnail, printed it out at full size on Bristol out of your printer, and inked on top of that.
Right.
Cool.
Which, yeah.
No, you have an original piece of art that you could sell. Good job. or not sell. Keep
I was
forever.
going to say heritage in 40 years. Maybe it'll go for 300,000.
Robert,
Yeah.
how did you actually make your piece of art and transferring the original information?
For me, I wanted to, again, yeah, I am really curious to talk to Billy about like his shot choices and things because he made his like much more cinematic in a lot of ways. In my approach, there was only a few changes I felt a need to make in regards to camera angles, either to zoom in or zoom out slightly. Panel 1 I thought was composed extremely well, and I felt zero need to change that. The only thing I was changing was just Snake Eyes' body type slightly. Even the pose of the ninja is just so spot on. It's just so great. And even the texturing is just beautiful. So compositionally, that one I literally light boxed and then just changed the figures on top. So I wasn't even looking to change the composition. Panel 2 I just redrew. Panel 3 I believe I light boxed for scale and then redrew the figures. Panel 4 the pose is very similar. And I just adjusted the size to fit slightly better so I wasn't hitting a tangent on the bottom of the panel. And obviously just rendered for style. Panel 3 I redrew just to make it a bit more dynamic. And panel 4 is very similar to the last panel of the original page, or I'm sorry, panel 5 or 6 at this point, the last panel basically. Because to me that's just so iconic. I mean, you can't rework that facial expression, and even down to the lettering on the grenade. I'm like, I'm not changing. I'm going to obviously render it different for my style, but I'm not going to change a line of this panel because my page. I think there's a few pages in the book that I felt if you changed them, it would do a disservice to this story. There's a few pages in the book that I thought if you changed it, you actually hurt the story. And on this page, I felt like there was a couple panels that do that. Panel 3 and the last panel were two of those, where we get the reveal of the ninja, and the last panel. And if I ever made a change, it was just Snake Eyes' body type to make it a little bit more my own, like what I'm a bit known for and how I render him. And then just overall rendering and shading. If I changed, panel 2 and panel 5, that was typically a bit more just for dynamics and to modernize it a bit. I rarely change. I don't even do a lot of diagonal panel work. But if I do, it's just to emphasize action and to build up, energy and excitement, and I don't even go too crazy with overlapping panels or breaking panel borders. I don't think it's that necessary. But in this sense, we have a lot of setup and then the moment, and I thought that middle tier could use just a little bit more, and also to accentuate the shape of the action. So I went ahead and just angled my middle tier panels. I thought about not framing in the last panel and letting that just do a full bleed, but I think cropping it again just makes it more cinematic to crop it. So I just went ahead and still did that anyway.
I like the little subtlety that you're saying there about the size in that panel for just sort of slightly shifting it higher up so that you're not getting the tangent. It's that's really subtle. I wouldn't have even noticed that if you hadn't pointed out. It's sort of showing the sort of emphasizing the point of the sai, as well as sort of moving it up slightly from the border. One of my favorite little touches on your page is just making the lettering on the grenade, just giving it the shaded effect so that it's making it look like that lettering is 3D essentially, like it's a stamp, like embossed. Thanks, yeah. It's just a little thing, but sort of just bringing it, I guess, modernizing it a little bit and sort of being able to add just a little detail to it. I'm also noticing now the diagonals, which I hadn't actually picked up on my first read through of that.
How did the two of you, and Robert, why don't you start this time? How did you feel about maintaining Snake Eyes' costume?
I had asked about that and got no direction. So I said, because that would have been helpful too if somebody had come in, and I don't even care who it had been, but if they had just come in and said, we're going to go with this take on Snake Eyes' uniform, right? And said it's a bit more modern, or we're going to go with the exact version like it is in the book. If they had just come in editorially and said, we're going to make this, editorial decision to do it this way. Instead, we get a bit of variation. Which I don't even mind either. It's just that artist interpretation of it with each single page. It just adds more variety as a result. So, I don't know that there's a right or wrong way about it. The different ways they could have went about it is to have somebody do just a model sheet, and then we all would have stuck to it, and then it would have kept it consistent, and we still would have had varying either body types or rendering styles, and we still would have got that uniqueness. And a certain someone probably would have still ignored it when they did their page.
I was just gonna say, page 19 probably would have been different.
But still, it doesn't. I don't necessarily know that. Obviously, I still love the books. I don't know that that was a wrong choice. I'm not criticizing that choice. But we weren't given anything. We weren't given any direction.
Billy, how do you feel about your take on the costume? What did you feel like your approach was going to be?
It's funny because I think my brain thought there's 3 different ways I could go, like super extreme, like underground comics looking, or that would be like a level 3, and like a level 1 would be like trace the original page because it's perfect, and then 2 would be somewhere in the middle. And I think I did 2, but not knowing what other people were doing, I thought, oh my gosh, are the other pages going to be like underground comics? Like, is someone going to collage like newspapers and make a page? Is someone going to do this whole thing with crayons or photograph toys? And then I'm going to be like the one guy that drew it normal.
Yeah.
That would have been embarrassing. I even, I always toy with the idea of wanting to color it myself. And I think I would have done like Ben-Day dot screens and, added the, what do they call it? Added the noise in Photoshop and tried to make
like
it look
screen tones,
retro. Yeah. But I also like, Robert's more modern take, like tilting Snake Eyes' head, and, it looks like it was made in 2022 and not 1983, 84.
And I think, James Brown was the colorist, so that kept things consistent. Having a consistent colorist does tie together throughout. And then, and just quickly, just to step back, I lightboxed certain panels for composition, but then finished it in pencil and inked it directly on the board. So I had just a pencil and inked final page, because I definitely wanted that original. So
is this
my page.
Is this the last page you're ever going to sell from your art collection? No, I already sold it. Cool.
It's gone.
Congratulations, Robert, and to the buyer.
I mean, I do have some pages that I like and that I've kept, but I've never been too precious about my art. I don't know. I don't care about it that much. one of the two of you know this to some extent, or to a great extent, right? When an artist draws comics for, like 1 or 2 issues, there's not a lot of art. If you draw comics for 3 years, you suddenly have a giant stack of quite heavy paper. And yes, any one page is worth $15 or $30 or $40 or $500, and it's all potentially quite valuable. But if you have to move, or you have to lug it to a convention, all right, am I going to put it in Itoya folders? All right, well, now it's taking up 3 times as much space. And so on the one hand, people who, I think Walt Simonson does not sell his art, and I think Eric Larson right.
does not sell his art.
There's a few.
And that's cool because then, an IDW can say to Walt Simonson, can we scan a bunch of your Thor pages? We want to do a big book. And he's got them. But man, must that take up a lot of space. And, like we all own things, toys and DVDs. And, at a certain point, maybe it's every day, maybe it's every 5 years, you think, I should probably thin this out.
It would be fascinating to know how Walt Simonson keeps his art, because he's been working regularly, for a long period of time. Just the, I've no idea the number of issues that he's done. The amount of paper there must be staggering.
I'd be curious about the archival, necessities of that. One, to keep it from yellowing or to keep it preserved, and the insurance, in case, so it's not all in one place, or if it is, how it's protected. You wouldn't want that to go up in a fire or something like that.
Yeah. If at a basic level, if you just kept it in some boxes in a room with some air conditioning, you'd be doing pretty well. It doesn't, you don't need acid-free paper between each sheet necessarily. You don't need it in Itoya folders necessarily. Before, I think between the solicitation and, Mark, help me out with the timeline here. Around then was when the original art, Ed Hannigan, Klaus Jansson's cover to the original issue 21 was going up for auction. And so we sort of talked back and forth briefly, so should someone buy all the pages of the G.I. Joe 40th anniversary special and have their own complete collection of Silent Interlude? As far as I know, the new cover for this comic book has not sold. And also, I think the inks are on top of the original pencils, but I don't know. Maybe the inks were done off of a blue line.
A scan.
A scan. This comic is an edition of a Grail. And the art collector in me wonders how sort of the art collectors out there think of your pages.
Well, I know some pages were done digitally, and so even if one of the artists printed a one-off lithograph version that was notarized and stamped, that it's a one of one, I mean, it's still never quite the same. You know what I mean? It's I don't know. It's so, I mean, I don't know that there will ever be a purely, full original version of this out there.
Yeah, we briefly talked about this on another episode, or maybe it was just me and Tim talking. But anyway, about if a collector wanted to go out and get this issue, it would be an absolute nightmare, because you have to contact all of these different artists. Some of them might have only done it digitally. Some of them will have sold it already. The moment you find out, and another person will be holding on to it and say, you're never going to take it out of my, until it's my cold dead hands.
I was thinking. I know that. I was thinking the way to do it would have been, after the book was announced, to put out a call on social media and say something like, I am a well-known, well-funded art collector, and I'd like to announce to all of the contributors to this G.I. Joe comic, I will pledge this much money right now to each of you if you lock in your page for me. But one would have had to have done that many months ago.
Yeah, I mean, if they did that, if they announced it with the editors, and I don't know if this has ever been done, but if the editor reached out and said, hey, this is the page rate, we'd love you to work on it, and we have this collector that's interested in buying the page if you do it originally. Heck yeah, people would sign on and do the original. You know what I mean? Because IDW is only going to pay so much for a page rate, but if you're getting so much on the back end for the original, then you have even more incentive to do it, and to do it original, and to get it done by a certain time, and then that collector is going to get it all.
Robert, do you know who drew their pages digitally?
I think off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure Tom Feaster did his digitally
Right.
on the page one, but
Yeah.
because he just works digitally now, and I chat
I-
with him pretty often.
I would guess Freddie Williams II because he wrote a book about drawing digitally. I don't know if he still does or if he does consistently.
Yeah, but he sells a lot of his art on his website as well, so he isn't just
He works
digital.
both ways.
Tom Feaster did
He does those
hard
gray
to say.
washes. Yeah.
did have a bit of process page there in the back of the book, so it looks like he certainly used some digital tools to at least lay it out. Even
He
if
probably did a blue line and then finished with inks just to have an original.
Yeah, actually, that's a good reminder, Mark. Freddie Williams II's making of page in the back is definitely a computer blue line sketch, but it does look like it's been printed out on Bristol.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, sort of doing a good chunk of it on digital, then printing and finishing it by hand, perhaps.
If you don't mind, I'd really like to talk, Billy, about panel to panel, like we did with my page,
sure, yeah,
kind of some of the comparison of the original and your shots.
Where are we?
Yeah, Billy, I don't know whether to phrase the question like panel 1, you flipped the camera, which is wow, that's amazing. What were you thinking? Or how dare you?
Right.
I think it's great. I love it. I think
every shot you made was the right choice. But
I think
I want to know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Watching. Okay, this is nerdy, but doing my little stop motion version of it, I realize there's a bunch of helmets on the ground now. All those dudes got their hats knocked off.
So that's cool. It's picking it up from the previous page. Yeah.
I thought that'd be neat to show, the debris on the ground. And panel 1, the original, is perfect, but I don't know if we know which guy exactly is attacking Snake Eyes. If you hop with me into the Wayback Machine, and go back to 1984.
The one who gets the knife in his chest, or the one who doesn't get the knife in his chest?
Right. I'm thinking the guy that gets backhanded is the first guy to wake up.
Yeah.
Right, because he just gets slapped.
Right. But it is funny too, because I think the guy, okay, what page is mine? 12. On 11, the guy with the goggles, I think, disappears.
Yeah, he kind of just drops,
right
up against the balustrade. He's just up against the half wall there.
Right.
Yeah, he's cropped out of panel.
I did try to include him in my panel 1, and I tried to make the Uzi all black so you could still see it. But yeah, you're basically just if you change the camera angle too much on certain panels in this whole book, Larry already picked the best angle.
Right.
Like when Robert's talking about Snake Eyes going up the stairs and the ninja's just standing there like this. If you did it from the ninja's point of view, you wouldn't see his arms crossed.
Right.
Or you'd be between his legs, and Snake Eyes would be really tiny down the stairs.
Or if you zoomed in on him.
All the perfect angles have already been picked. So I just kind of did the best I could. It was a weird assignment. I kept thinking of Gus Van Sant's Psycho remake.
Which is a shot-for-shot remake of the Hitchcock original, where Van Sant didn't change anything in terms of directing.
Right. The actors are different. The color is different. There is color. So I thought, if his goal was to bring attention to the original, that I could pat myself on the back for that. Hey, you guys need to go seek out the original if you like this one. And then they printed it in the back of this one also. So you don't have to go very far.
The nuances here in panel 3 are exceptionally good. the silhouette and clarity of like the struggle between the two of them, and like their poses are great, and the silhouette is great, like showing the Uzi going down, kind of leading, and yeah, the pose is fantastic. But it's just like, you know, it's not. I mean, working out the choreography of these types of struggles is really difficult. I mean, it's one of the funnest challenges that I love about kind of action adventure comics. I love it. I really get into this kind of stuff. But so I really
Right.
appreciate it too when people think through the mechanics of like, where would your hand go? How would you grab them? You know, just to use that body leverage and thinking through that. I just love it. I think this looks awesome.
Well, it's embarrassing, but I would never do like a horizontal panel that tall typically.
Mhm.
But I really, you know, as a stickler for giving your eye room to breathe, like his Cobra boot, I think is way too long, but I like the way it fills up the rest of
Yeah.
the panel, and it does bring your eye down to Snake Eyes and then the gun. But as
Yeah.
far as like acting it out, I did act out Snake Eyes' pose for panel 1
Oh yeah.
because
That's good.
I think he
Show-
just back.
Show us the reference photo. Grab your camera.
Well, it's a video. Like I acted it out. I acted out. You know, you backhand a dude. So which way is your body twisted?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he, so he throws a knife, slaps the other dude, and then I was thinking I had to do this on my porch because the railing of the porch is the balustrade of the
I
castle,
love it. This is awesome.
the parapet or whatever. And I had to turn around and look. And there's another video of me like attacking myself, like holding my head, which is ridiculous. And in the blue line,
That's great.
I think I have his arm reaching out more.
Uh-huh.
I had Snake
Oh
Eyes.
yeah.
You can see him reaching for the gun,
Uh-huh.
which I
Oh,
think
that's cool.
visually would have made more sense, but choreography wise didn't. Like I think his arm would still be. You get to overthink when you're getting paid the big bucks. So
No, I think what this conversation demonstrates is that drawing comics is difficult, and the people who think about it a lot tend to draw the better comics. Something else that's going on here, right? Billy just mentioned these tall vertical panels, and there are several in this issue where
Yeah, a
there
lot.
are 3 or 4 tall vertical panels across the top tier and or the bottom tier, and then a really stubby horizontal panel in the middle of the page, which almost to me looks like a truncation of the Arashikaje tattoo. But I think that's inadvertent, right? Like Hama's not like
No.
he's not like
And at least
Go ahead.
At least a couple of these scenes with the longer kind of panels are set on the battlements. So certainly this one is as well. So there's a bit of kind of synchronicity between the panel layout and the location.
Yeah, I think part of what's happening here is that in traditional 1970s and 80s Marvel comics, right, the sort of rule was, I don't know who invented it, but editor-in-chief Jim Shooter certainly like spread it, right? Andrew Wildman mentioned this from when he was working on Transformers. That generally the top third of the panel, of any panel, is kept devoid of important details because that's where word balloons are going to go, generally. And so you have this issue where the guy writing it, drawing it, knows there aren't going to be any word balloons. And so there is no space in any panel where he can't put something important or fun. And also, and this sort of blows my mind. When I'm sitting with my sketchbook, I try and do this and then I like can't do it. The way that Hama draws, and I want to say he got this from Krigstein, but I could be misremembering a fact. Hama draws heads first and hands and feet first, right? Like a lot of people, when they draw the figure, they draw a line of action, like a swoosh, right? A line that sort of represents the energy of the pose. It's related to what the spine is doing. It's often a spine and a dominant leg. And um, and you look at how like a lot of kids draw or students draw, and they draw like the head and then the neck and then the torso and then like the arms and then the legs, and like hands and feet come last. And I have a little video of Hama demoing this on a dry erase board, and it's really cool. And he says, if you rough out where the head, hands, and feet are going to go, everything else can fit. Like if you put it, like I'll demonstrate for you in my rectangle, right? If you put a hand, if you draw this head first and you put this hand here, it's like, okay, well, you know the arm is going to have to go from here to here. And if you put the hands here, circle, circle, right? As opposed to like, all right, well, I'm going to draw the head, I'm going to draw the body. Let me do this here. I'm going to draw the head, I'm going to draw the body, and then like, oh, I ran out of space because my body's too far over and my arms are the proper length, or I wanted to stretch them out slightly for the snap of it. Oh, my hands are cropped out. And so, you know, there are artists who can sort of see it before they draw it. Artists can see it before they draw it to a greater and lesser extent, whether it's sort of like through their eyeballs projected onto the page or just in their head. And I think that these 4 panels, especially, Billy, are a nice sort of continuation of what Hama was doing in laying out this issue originally, in that it does all fit. Like that first panel is really satisfying because it tells a lot of story, but it's not a big, flashy, sexy panel. It's not like a ninja jumping in the air in the middle of nowhere, kind of attacking another ninja, and there are no details drawn on their bodies. Page 19.
What strikes me? Sorry, Billy. I was going to just say, add in as well. What strikes me about these top 4 panels as well is you know, and comparing it to some of the other pages as well, is that you've got the basic same panel layout. You've got the basic same thing happening in each panel, but you've sort of twisted the perspective for each one of those just so it is something different, and that there's a, you know, it's not necessarily changing it just for changing its sake, but you know, showing it from a different angle does give something different and not necessarily better because the original was so fantastic, but it's not, you know, it's not any worse from making that choice. And you know, the very last panel there, the guy falling towards us with his, you know, eyes bulging and stuff. That's you know, a much more dynamic panel compared to the sort of the zoomed out silhouette of the original panel of the soldier falling,
which I do love. The wide shot in the original where it's just
yeah, what the original, so to Mark's point just now about Billy changing the angles a little bit here and it not necessarily being better or worse but different, I think the word is that it's more modern. And that's not a compliment or an insult. Hama says when he talks about how he does his convention sketches, or every so often in an interview, someone says, why don't you draw comics, right? You're a writer, but you draw, why don't you draw more comics? And one of the reasons is he says, well, I don't have a very flashy modern style, right? Like, I think we've all absorbed 15 years of convention sketches, and we forget that if he wanted to do full pencils, like, he's got arthritis, but he could. But yes, you look at the original and there is a lot of sort of north-south and east and west in the original. And that's not good or bad. I think that's just like how Hama lays out pages and pencils. And also, like it is a kind of unadorned storyteller. Like you see it in the Nam, like Marvel's the Nam. You see it in certain comics where, I don't know, like compare a Matt Murdock courtroom scene in a Daredevil comic to Daredevil fighting the Hand, right? It's just a different approach. And this comic originally is a product of 1984. And this new comic is very much a product of 2022. I will say from panel 4 to panel 5, what we have now is the surprise of this Cobra soldier, his big eyes. We now see it twice. So the effect is different, right? And Hama's original panel 4, with that very, very long shot, if this was a movie, it's almost like you hear the struggle for the first 3 panels. You hear all these like body moves and clothing and like footsteps. And then in that 4th panel, you cut 50 feet back and you kind of just hear like,
yeah.
Right. And now we're much closer and it's louder. And so the note gets hit twice.
Yeah.
Because we see him in panel 4, and then we see him almost horizontally below that, lined up in panel 5.
Mm-hmm.
So the sort of like the joke of it is different.
Yeah, because it zooms out and it has so much negative space in the original. It has so much negative space that's different than when we zoom in and we punch in for panel 5 for the reveal of him flying past the window for Destro's reveal. Whereas this one, I think also it's more continuous to the action. We have those 4 vertical panels that hit like staccato beats and music, or like a quick cut action movie in an edited trailer or something like that. It's like bang, 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 like these 4 quick beats. And then that just flows even vertically. The line of the building flows directly down into the face of the guy falling. So we get that verticality of him dropping. And then we move from right to left against story flow, which feels antagonistic. And we see Destro's face and his realization, like, what? And as he notices, and then that brings us down because of his alignment with the shadow. It's brilliant. It's so great. So that brings us down into the last panel. It all flows extremely well this way. So even the changes that made, it just, I think, keeps the action continuous as opposed to having that visual break in the action and then pick back up. And it's just a pacing difference.
When I gave this comic to my wife, because I thought, oh, it's been colored like by the same guy. It's all colored. She'll have a harder time picking it out. And she flipped through it. She was like, those are your eyes on page 12. And I'm like, really? I didn't think so.
Great.
Another change that Billy has made in panel 6 is adding more Cobra soldiers, or adding more of them.
Yeah.
And Larry has talked about he roughed this in 3 days, and because it was behind schedule. And in that original panel 6, he's drawing only 1 full figured guy, and then only 3 partially figured guys, and then a bunch of heads, or not even heads, just a little bit of a helmet and
Sharpie caps in the hallway.
Yeah.
Right. And sort of the story goes that kids wrote in letters saying, like, oh, this issue wasn't a good value because it didn't have any script. Did you forget the word balloons? And a panel like this in the original walks this fine line of something that's going to be harder to draw and take more time, showing just enough of it, indicating that sort of we fill in the rest. Like, I see those 2 Cobra heads on the bottom and the 4 little Sharpie caps on the bottom right. And I see the red light and I see Destro's pose. Like, I understand this. I'm not like, I don't need a 2-page splash of 15 Cobra soldiers running down a hallway, And so Billy, whether knowing it or not, gets the opportunity in redrawing this page to add a little bit more of figure work.
I just love that Destro against a white wall. Like, he looks so good. And the clarity
I was
of
about
the,
to,
the clarity is so good. Oh, sorry.
I was about to say one of the things that strikes me most about that bottom panel is how you've almost like punched it up with a great big whacking shadow. So I think we're saying the same thing from different angles. But yeah, the original one, it's like Destro on a quite stark white wall, and now it's there's some quite heavy blacks, and it feels like more like a kind of horror, lighting mood to it, doesn't it?
I was going for that Rocketeer cover.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cliff's got his backpack.
One of the things that I love about comics before the era of digital color is that certain color artists would let the white of the page be the lightest thing on a page. Spotlight, snow, and I think that's sort of fallen out of favor with almost all digital colorists.
Mm-hmm.
And so the beige here behind Destro, it makes sense, but I will always respond more to the look of the 64 colors of 4-color process color on newsprint paper, that we know of comics from the 30s to the 90s.
I'm a two-tone kind of guy.
Mm.
I really like what Matt Wilson does on Firepower.
Yeah. Mark and I were just talking about that book in the last podcast. Sorry, Mark, go for it.
Yeah, Billy, I think Robert was saying that he was given a very short deadline, which ended up taking a little bit longer than that to complete his page. What sort of experience did you have in terms of that regard, of when you were told, how long you were told you had, and then how long it actually took?
I'm embarrassed because I do think it was like 2 weeks, which I think is like the kiss of death. If you tell Billy Penn you've got 2 weeks to do a page, I'm like, okay. And then it's like where'd those 13 days go? Yeah. Got all the time in the world.
Is what you're saying, that sounds more universal maybe than you're making it out to seem. I feel like other artists might do something similar.
Yeah, just teaching, I'm like, okay, I've got this and this on my plate, and when this is off my plate, then I'll do this, and then things just keep getting added, and then I'm like, oh, 12 of those days are gone. And in your head that you could do a page a day if you sat down to do it, but I got to act this out on the back porch, and
that's half a day.
Right. You can pat yourself on the back like, I worked on it. If my wife's like, did you work on your page? I'm like, yeah.
I shot some video.
I'm wearing my black turtleneck, aren't I?
There doesn't seem to be any lines on the page yet. I worked. But I guess I saw on social media some of the artists involved saying that it was a very quick turnaround time, and the thought did occur to me that that is somewhat in keeping with the spirit of the issue. I mean, that it was turned around over the course of a weekend originally, so maybe giving artists a quite strict deadline is in keeping with that.
I don't know if Robert can speak to this, but as a Joe fan, I saw the solicitation first. And I think the solicitation had like 4 or 5 names, and it was like, and all your other fan favorite artists. And I was like, oh, I didn't get called. And then 5 days later, I was like, oh, yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think, I'd be curious to kind of be a fly on the wall for that editorial meeting where they had the idea, wait, we could do this. It's actually the 40th anniversary and let's do this. Because I think they made the decision in January. They probably made initial calls late January. I'm thinking back on the timeline here. And then, and it's not that big of a deal, but I think, I remember exactly. I could look up the emails. It doesn't even matter. But I think I got an initial email. I think I was probably in, I wasn't like the first person called or anything like that, but just in general, we got asked, but I wasn't, they had asked a few people for that initial solicitation, and I think they had the idea they wanted to do it, but we, I don't think they had reached out to 20 artists or so and then got confirmation and then ran the solicitation. You know what I mean? They had said, hey, this is an idea, and I'm sure enough people will say yes that we could do the project, and then solicited it because they just wanted to go and they wanted the sales. They knew it was like guaranteed sales, and they knew they could run it with multiple covers, and it was like money in the bank. Let's do this. And they didn't have to write a new script for it. They're like, this is an easy
no script, no letter.
I think the phrase you're looking for, Robert, is printing money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, for the most part.
So notably, all right. So I'm looking at the solicit right now, and it says,
Me too.
It says including S.L. Gallant, Lito Diaz, Andrew Lee Griffith, and many more. And notably, Gallant is not in this book.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
how
No,
to.
but many more are.
And
They got that right.
sort of everyone else is, right? Like everyone else who like should be, who's done G.I. Joe for IDW in the last 5-10 years.
I need to talk to Shannon about that. I need to find out what happened there, because I mean, he definitely should have been. He's the longest running Joe artist that's worked with Larry.
Right.
I know at times there's been some.
Yeah, he must
some
have just
story,
been up against
but-
some other deadline that he had to
Yeah,
get
he's always-
the
always-
other unreasonable deadline done first.
Yeah, the regular issues. And then to a different point that Robert just made, you know, like this is guaranteed sales, particularly with variant covers.
Yeah.
To my great surprise, there are no variant covers for this comic. And sometimes that might be down to time because you have to commission one more artist.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the minute Hama showed the pencils on Facebook of the cover, I thought, well, there's your variant cover, or just the inks without color. And maybe someone crunched some numbers and said, you know, we have found that variant covers on an $8 comic are a dicier proposition. Although, you know, I would never guess that. I feel like variant covers on any comic sell more comics, and as a retailer,
especially this one, like, because this was going to sell no matter what. And I think if anything, it was probably under ordered, and this is going to have like a resale value out there. I don't know why they felt a need to rush it. I mean, I just don't. I mean, I don't know what behind the scenes are. I don't know any of those answers, but I think considering they ran, I don't know how many covers for The Last Ronin and for all these other books that are out there, like they could have easily done 20 plus covers for this book.
Well, I think
people would have jumped at the chance to do it.
I think the comparison with The Last Ronin makes sense as a reader, but since like Nickelodeon and Turtles and that readership is a different thing,
right?
I think the comparison, I mean, although Last Ronin is more expensive, I think the comparison would be like the first issue or the final issue of Snake Eyes Dead Game, where you have a G.I. Joe thing that's unusual and it has a high marquee value. And all those issues of Dead Game had 17,000 variant covers. And, and, you know, actually, since this is an old-fashioned kind of comic, you know, this is an anniversary special. It's double size. We don't get many of those for G.I. Joe. It's a kind of a reprint. It's a single issue reprint. You know, you don't get that a lot. I mean, you get second prints, but you don't get sort of like deluxe reprints of comics so much anymore because readers and publishers, just waiting for the graphic novel collection.
Right.
But there's something that I find really reassuring in an old-fashioned, simple way, that this does not have a variant cover, right? It's like the thing that I know this for, this cover, that's all there is. It's not like there's some like painting of Scarlet like in a white Cobra uniform for no reason, and like some store has an exclusive on that. And if I only go to this convention in Georgia, there'll be like Baroness and like Serpentor with no logo, and that's like the convention exclusive of this comic. It's like, no, Snake Eyes, that Snake Eyes comic, you know, that's the comic.
Yeah.
But but for perspective of IDW making money off G.I. Joe, yeah, give me some variant covers.
Yeah.
Especially this being the last year they have it.
Yeah, maybe just because, you know, Larry Hama doing this cover was, you know, special enough that they thought, let's just have that as the focus. Let's not distract. I don't know.
I think the reason, if I had to guess, it is the most pedestrian, and that is time.
Yeah.
I think this final year of G.I. Joe, in a normal year of G.I. Joe, it's hard to get 12 issues out because you've got approvals from Hasbro, and then there are still supply chain, shipping, paper, printing, talent, slowdowns and shortages. And, you know, like my dream for this final year was there was going to be 6 months ago when I was imagining my best 40th anniversary G.I. Joe year. Well, there was going to be a double-sized special in March for the actual anniversary, and then there's going to be double-sized 300, and then there's going to be a side miniseries like Silent Option, just more story, and some cool reprints, and then maybe some special that like Stephen Grant and like Mike Costa would write. It's like, let's get some of the guys who aren't Hama who wrote G.I. Joe just because. And what we're getting is, and then the reality is, in your final year, in your final 6 months of a license, how many things can you have come out in the final month? Because in the final month, the final issue is going to come out, and any graphic novel that collects the final issues and anything that's been delayed all year, that is your final chance to sell it. January 1st, can't sell it. And so I think from a management perspective, even something like this, which is a home run, just wrangling 22, 25 artists, it's already written and everyone knows what to do. But putting this comic together is harder than a regular issue G.I. Joe drawn by one or two people.
Mm-hmm. And I think so. I was going to circle back to the point that we started making about these list of artists, and the 90% of them are artists who have been consistently, who have been working on the book in recent months. So we had S.L. Gallant being the consistent artist for a very long period, and then Nitho Diaz having quite a long run. But then after that, it's been a lot of people doing one issue at a time for the most part. And going through these names, it has all of those people really who have been doing the one issue have been one of the people that have been approached. So Tom Feister's been doing, Tom Feister is an alumni of IDW earlier years, less so recently. Freddie Williams has been doing a lot of the recent covers. Alex Sanchez did one of the recent issues. Brian Shearer, long time.
I mean, he was inking Shannon, and then he did a couple fill-in issues.
Yeah, he's done I think 2 issues on his own, which Tim appreciates. Dan Schoening did very nice Untold Tale issue and has since been doing the Saturday Morning Adventures. Casey Maloney did a recent issue. Maria Keane has been inking. I think she inked over you, Robert, on the final issue of Snake Hunt, I believe.
Yeah. She came in and helped with Brian,
and is the inker for these issues in the run up to 300 as well. Adam Riches is in the G.I. Joe sphere, but I think this is his
he's
first
only done a couple sequential
pages.
Yeah, he did one, I think, for Marvel, and then but mostly like package art type stuff.
Yeah, I think he's done some of the variant covers, particularly for IDW. Then Alex Milne is one of the names I'm not familiar
he's more known
with,
for
along with
Transformers.
Tim Lottie.
Alex Milne has drawn a bunch of Transformers for Dreamwave and also IDW, but G.I. Joe did show up in his Transformers a couple years ago.
Transformer G.I. Joe crossover,
So the continuity in the last 5 years, where the Hasbro verse, as that was happening, G.I. Joe shows up for a few pages of Milne's.
Yeah. I'll jump back then at sort of Tim Lottie, who I glossed over. Do we know his connection to IDW?
He's done some covers for Ghostbusters. He like a whole bunch of covers that for like Dan Schoening would do the A cover, and Tim Lottie would do the B cover. Tim Lottie did a B cover for G.I. Joe, the one with the keel hull, in the last couple of months, and he did the yearbook 2 reprint that came out a few months ago.
Okay,
so he's done two G.I. Joe covers. Definitely
in the Rolodex. Nitho Diaz obviously has done a lot of G.I. Joe work. Billy Penn, we know. Kei Zama did the recent year. I say recent, it's probably years and years ago, but recent in my mind anyway. Recent yearbook strip she did. Daniel Main, another name I'm less familiar with.
I haven't gotten to that part in my blog yet, and I have not yet
Mm.
figured out Daniel Main's connection to G.I. Joe or IDW.
Cuba Ball did one of the Untold Tales, very nice issue with Falcon. Antonio Fuso obviously did a long run on Cobra. Less, and actually some of the Death of Snake Eyes covers as well. Robert Atkins, Salvador Velasquez, I'm not familiar with. Rob Liefeld obviously did Snake Eyes, Dead Game recently. Jamie Sullivan has been doing lots of the variant covers. Andrew Lee Griffith has done quite a number. Did most of Murder by Assassination as well as a couple of other issues recently. And Ron Joseph similarly has done a few issues over the last few years. So most of the names there out of the Rolodex. Sorry, Billy, you were going to make a point before then I started jumping over the top of you.
I
don't remember what it was.
No.
I'll skip back to your page because there was something I wanted to touch on as well, and we've got one of the comments coming through here from Dash Solo 90. Billy Penn is such an inspiration of mine. There we go. You've got a fan out there.
Dash Solo, you too can draw a G.I. Joe cover at your kid's soccer game. Am I remembering this right?
That is my kid. I think he's streaming this in the living room. Ignore Dash Solo 90.
Okay.
Unless he means that. Do you mean that, Dash? No.
He speaks a lot of truth. He speaks a lot of truth. I love G.I. Joe. So what I was going to just jump to, so obviously this isn't your first rodeo with the Silent Interlude issue. You did a sort of stop motion recreation of it, which we went into with Dash Solo and the whole clan. And we went into a detail on it on a previous episode. And what I've got here is my my very rough and ready approximation of your new page recycling.
That's the page I should have previous sent in,
video. So I'll just let that sing. That piece of
I like the inclusion of a panel there in the middle.
Destro inspects at the window. Actually, Billy, if you had taken Mark's composite here, opened it in Photoshop, taken out all the saturation, stripped out half the gray tones, sent that in, it could still be colored like a normal black and white or black and white and gray page. Maybe it would have made it in. Maybe
that would be interesting. That would be interesting.
And then you could have been that experimental guy that you were talking about before.
Exactly. They'd have been like, who is this? And everybody would have lit up the boards.
We thought this guy was going to draw it normal, like the issue he drew. Right. I wonder, so do the three of you remember Wednesday Comics, which was a 12-issue experiment from DC?
Yeah.
So editor, art director Mark Chiarello, who's an amazing painter himself, put together this weekly series. It was printed on newsprint and it unfolded like a newspaper. Oh yeah. And Mark has the oversized hardcover, and the idea was like in the 19-teens, American newspapers, the Sunday strips, the most famous ones were the full page. They weren't a third of the page or 4 tiny boxes. And so this series was weekly and it was called Wednesday Comics because you'd buy new comics on Wednesday, but it was supposed to be like Sunday Comics. And the trains had to run on time, right? There were 12 creative teams. Everyone was turning in only 12 pages, but they were more than double sized. And it was such a weird project. And it was put together over like 6 months. And Chiarello commissioned 2 one-page strips that were going to run in case someone missed a deadline. And no one missed a deadline. All 12 issues got printed in 12 weeks with all 12 stories. But for the hardcover, those 2 additional pages are included. And those people knew that they were backups, a plan B contingency. And I have wondered, not to embarrass anyone, but just in the process of schedules and availability and interest, was anyone else asked if they wanted to draw a page for the 40th anniversary special? Who said no? no, sorry, I can't. Or maybe, did anyone, and this would embarrass someone, so I should never know, but I'm curious. Did anyone say yes? And then they didn't hit their deadline, and there's a half-drawn page out there. And could that please get put in the hardcover coming later this year?
But there's a curious part of the book as well, which is that Andrew Lee Griffith did his page, and he has it framed and on his wall. So yeah, no collector's getting that off of him. But he also did do this page on the left, the final page, 22, which was the page that Ron Joseph had published. So they've shared this in the back of in the sketchbook section at the back here. So it's curious. He's the one artist in the book who has got 2 pages published. That's a in the middle, the mid of the images that I'm sharing. The middle one is a previous Scarlet commission that he did, and the one on the image on the right is his own Scarlet and Claw toy, which he used for reference to draw that. So
the pencils on the left are an additional page that he drew. I wonder if in his excitement he just drew 2 pages and said, "I don't know, pick one." Ah!
Yeah. I was wondering that myself. He, maybe got a bit excited, or maybe it's like, I'm enjoying this so much, just for fun, I'm going to draw the next page and see.
One of my biggest fears with the PDF is that we were on the same page with what numbering we had. So like in my emails or correspondence, when I said like page 12 in parentheses, I was always like, Destro running up the stairs.
Right. Yeah.
Like I did not want to turn in a page and they're like, well, we got somebody else that did it way better than you. And now you don't have a page.
They're like, you know what? Like Andrew Lee Griffith drew 2 pages. We're gonna bump both of them because we only asked for one. You can do his page.
I was the same way. I described mine as the Grenade Indiana Jones page. I did the same thing, exactly the same thing.
Okay.
All right, I finally found the idea that manages to mix the sales potential that Robert was talking about before with the 90s and modern cynicism of comics that I find so fascinating and upsetting. I know we're all used to now for some big deal issues, first issues, like actually 10 or 15 variant covers, like every 2 years when Marvel does a new Spider-Man #1, like I'm not exaggerating, there will be 15 variant covers, and this is separate from convention or store exclusives. The first time that I was shocked by how many variant covers a comic book had was when Gen 13 launched its ongoing series after the miniseries wrapped up. And this was, I think, a surprise. I think when it, at least for the reader, when it debuted, I got to the store and my store owner said, "Oh, there are 13 covers." And you think 13 covers is a lot in 2022. It was egregious in 1995, right? Now, the good news is that 2 of them were sort of dumb, but the rest of them are like amazing, right? They're all wonderful, fun, crazy, sexy drawings, right? It's what you expect from Gen 13. You won't be surprised to know that I got the Michael Golden one. And so here's what could have happened. 22 variant covers, each drawn by the artists drawing the issue. Everyone doing their take on this pose, including Shannon Gallup. You're welcome.
It's funny you mentioned Gen 13 because that was the pre-internet era. So all the kids listening out there, like my buddy Chuck and I, he had his driver's license by then. We went to like the 4 stores in Tallahassee just to say, which one do you have? Like,
yeah,
like you would literally drive from store to store to see, oh, you got the Blue Line cover, or oh, like now you just Google it and in 2 seconds you can see all 13. But it is so weird to think that we had to drive around town,
or you
like we knew they existed, we just didn't know what they looked like.
Or you had to wait until you got some mail order catalog for that had back issues. It's like, oh, they're listing ones by Jason Pearson. What does that look like?
Right. I think the zine published all of them.
Right.
The
Okay.
June 13th zine.
Right. There's a new hardcover which has the miniseries and the first issues of the regular series starting over, and that has all of the variants.
Okay.
That's cool.
Have you? All right. So we've talked about, with the two of you, your approach to your pages. Did you at all think about the cover, sort of a what if scenario, or when Hama posted his pencils, did that get any gears turning? Because the cover is so much of the iconic nature of the issue. I mean,
Yeah.
the original cover, that is.
No, I mean, no. They just approached me about the page, and that was all I could fit in schedule wise anyway. It's not like I was like, hey, so you got somebody lined up for that cover? I wasn't like, trying to get that too, or anything like that. I didn't know if they had planned to do variants. It actually honestly didn't cross my mind until after I saw it come out. I was like, oh, I'm surprised there aren't any variants, just because they had been doing that. And because honestly, IDW, their typical business model is at least 2 to 3 variants. They do an A and B. They usually have a retailer incentive. I mean, so I was just surprised that there wasn't, but that's all the thought I honestly put into it. So, I mean, that was it for me.
I think when Larry put that sketch up on Facebook, I think my brain automatically went to, oh, they're going to have different people ink this and different people color this. Like that would be the variant. And then when I think he posted like Lealoa inked it, and he's like, this is the first time we've worked together, like on the cover. I was like, oh, well, that's a neat little tidbit or nugget. Like they didn't do the cover together, but they did pages 1 through 22 together.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
so I thought that was a neat full circle.
Maybe since it would be impossible for an art collector to own all 22 pages, since some are digital, some are already sold, maybe the trick is some enterprising art collector needs to commission all 22 of you to each draw your take on this cover as originals, not digital, and then buy them.
Like an NFT. The whole issue could be an NFT.
Because there was that art collector who commissioned a bunch of artists to do an entire issue of The Dark Knight, the Frank Miller book, and so he went out to all of the the big hot names. Struggling to remember who they all were, but a lot of the sort of the big names of today, like Jock and all these kind of guys.
Everyone drew one page.
Everyone drew one page. Yeah, it's a fascinating project. Would say try and do a Google and seek it out. I was trying to do a Google myself to try and see, because I think Billy, you have done a version of this cover, right? But with Tom Waltz's.
I was like, no, I didn't. But yes, I did. I did add Tom Waltz to the cover as like my own business card for him.
Is he hanging on the back of Snake Eyes the way that Mary Jane would be hanging on the back of Spider-Man as he's swinging? It's actually the original cover. You just added Tom Waltz.
That would be awesome.
No. It is Tom Waltz, but he's got a proton pack instead of an Uzi. And there's a little Ninja Turtle yelling in the corner.
Now,
like G.I. Joe.
Now, wouldn't if Tom is holding onto a rope, doesn't a proton pack take 2 hands to operate?
Not if you're Tom Waltz.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And not if you're just shooting wildly across, unresponsibly across the cityscape.
There will be no streams crossed.
Well, certainly you probably can't say yes if the answer is yes, so I won't ask if we might see any more G.I. Joe contributions from you in an official capacity this year. But I will say, I would love to see more G.I. Joe work from both of you in an official capacity this year or beyond. And there it is.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's some good cartooning.
So the most unusual calling card ever.
Do the two of you maybe sort of a wrap up thought, or a beginning to wrap up thought might be.
Well, real quick on your previous question.
Oh yeah.
I don't know for IDW, to be honest. If they wanted me to do a cover or something like that, I probably could. I don't know if I could even fit in anything in for interiors. I mean, I was able to do this one page. That was great. The amount of stuff that I'm doing right now for Renegade on the board game side and on the role-playing games like that, I've been swamped for a year and a half because I'm doing so much with them, which is great, and I love it. And they are putting out so much content; it is mind-boggling, and it's been phenomenal. I've really really loved it. They're putting so many resources into just building up this world and this just the gaming environment for Joe, which is phenomenal. They'll be putting out, from what I understand, like 2 expansion decks a year for their deck building game. They'll be putting out at least an expansion per year for their board game, and then they'll be doing I've already worked on 2 or 3 expansions for the role-playing game, like adventures. So you have your role-playing game hardcover rule book, but then you'll have adventure paths for each rule book. So every one of those adventure paths needs illustrated, and so they have a whole bank of illustrators they're working with. But and I fit in what I can with my teaching schedule, but I can only do so much. So I've been pulling in artists whenever I can, and they'll be working. I worked on this expansion with Chris Campana and Kyle Petchak and Marshall Henson, a number of other guys. And as I'm scaling back what I can do, because each game comes with typically like 50 illustrated cards. And so, like I said, it's just a big workload. And so I've tried to kind of divvy that out as best as I can. I'm not like a full art director. I work with an art director, but they usually say, who do you know that can draw the content well? And then I just reach out to people I know who are available, and then we just try to get the art job done. So usually they go through me, and then I farm out that work, and I usually pay them directly. So everybody gets credited, certainly, who works on it, but I end up being like a pseudo art director to get these done. And so I've been kind of managing the past 4 expansions the last year and a half on this stuff. So I don't see me doing interior work until I decide to step away from this. But it's a way for me just to be fully immersed in the characters and the property. And sometimes the deadline schedule is brutal on these, but it's not so consistent as the regular comic book work. And so usually also when the deadline comes up and it's tight, I can spread it out over a team of artists, and it's not too much for any one of us, which is harder to do for comics also. So
yeah, I've got my deck building game here.
yeah.
It looks lovely, but I think my brain is too small to make it work. It's I'm not a sort of someone very acquainted with the deck building game sort of mechanisms and stuff. So I think I need someone to hold my hand and walk me through.
If you watch a few like playthroughs on YouTube and stuff like that, and you just go through it once or twice, then you kind of get the groove of it. And I think especially once you get like, not that you need an expansion set to play it, but once you start getting like expansion packs, then there's a lot more variety to it too. I mean, you can play through that regular game. Like, it's self-contained, by all means, it's self-contained, and you play through it multiple times. But then once you get expansion packs, then you can nuance the deck you have based on the characters you like, or you'll get more variety of bad guys and Cobra soldiers and all that kind of stuff. But so it's cool.
I also have that box. It's in the other room, and my brain is also. I have never played card games, deck building games like that. So my answer is the same as Mark. I love this. I'm so excited to have it. I don't know how to play it yet.
What about you, Billy? Totally, do you think this is sort of the deck building game, or the RPG hard cover stuff? Is that in your wheelhouse?
Not typically, but I have seen these pictures circulating among the Joe fans on Facebook, and the cards always look neat. That I was gonna say they get 10-year-old me excited, like just seeing Serpentor right now, Hawk, and Snake Eyes version 2.
And the snakes on Serpentor are they're active. They're not,
Right.
they're not at rest. It's not a collar. They're alive.
Yeah.
And
Like they are
Robert, you
Yeah.
with this project and with the mobile game that you'd been involved with before and stuff, you must have drawn every single character by now. You must have drawn more of the G.I. Joe characters probably than any other G.I. Joe artist by this point, just in terms of the variety and all of the little
That's a good question. You'd
rabbit
think
holes.
so. You'd think so. There's some surprisingly well, and then I had done like that one cover that had every Cobra character on it for Devil's Due. That was years ago. But then for Joe's, where you get like a nice spotlight card or something like that. It wasn't until like somebody commissioned me to draw Lifeline. I don't think I'd ever drawn Lifeline until I had done that. And then, between either private commissions, projects like this, I'm sure there's quite a few that I've drawn, but you get asked to draw the same 13 to 25 characters over and over and over, even for every iteration of project. So one thing I do like about this project is they are branching out, and it's not just the current modern version. It's also not just the classic version. Like they're dipping into just different versions all through the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. Like they'll have us very specifically reference like every iteration that Joe's had, which I appreciate. I think it's cool because there's fans of each version that's come out. So
Cool. And then Billy, since last time we talked, we had this one is yours, isn't it? This very cool Be Kind Rewind retro video Saturday Morning Adventures cover.
I wanted to do a VHS variant, and I even drew IDW like with the mouse, like the FTE. What is it?
FHE.
FHE, Family Home Entertainment. Yeah, but I don't think they went with that. But
how did you get the shrink wrap highlights on the top?
that's so cool.
I think I just typed in like a VHS cassette tape on. I looked for like the highest res one I could find, maybe on eBay, and then
photoshopped it in.
Right. It's not as. I think what I should have done is printed it out myself and then stuck it in a white case and then photoed that case and then sent the photo so it looked.
Billy,
more
I think
really
I
cool.
think you should have spent more time on this.
Right.
I don't think you spent enough time on this cover.
I'm my own worst enemy for sure.
Do the two of you have thoughts about the anniversary, about the IDW wrapping up its affiliation with the brand in 2022?
I think it was interesting because I was working with Devil's Due when similar thing happened with them, and I was really good friends with the editor Michael Sullivan. So I kind of had his thoughts about it behind the scenes when he was editing there. We went to school together, me and Mike. We were both students at SCAD, and then he graduated 6 months before me. He became an editor at Devil's Due. So that was my connection there. How I started working there is he hired me, and then so about 6 months before they lost the license and it was announced, I kind of heard about kind of just in general they were bummed about losing it, and had to kind of roll with it, over with that company. And then when it transitioned over to IDW, I kind of luckily got that gig over there and was still associated with the property, and was with that initial push back in 2008, 2009. And I think it's had its own roller coaster over there with IDW, where they've had different times where I felt like they had a solid handle on how they wanted to go forward with it and with direction of story, and then times where it's honestly, I think it's floundered because they just weren't sure what the readership wanted. Different, and I think the editorial staff has shifted quite a bit, and it's not like IDW's fault or anything like that. Like literally, their editorial staff moved on, new editorial staff came in, and then they had to decide, well, what are we going to do with this property now? And whenever you have a transitory staff, then you have new ideas, and new ideas want to go in a new direction. The readership hasn't changed, the property doesn't change, but a new editorial staff will have a different voice, and so that I think created a few bumps in the road, for a lot of things, and so I don't know. And then IDW as a business model, they run their business a certain way. And so I've always enjoyed working with IDW. They pay on time. They're always very nice to work with. And they keep a good schedule. At the same time, I mean, they don't pay royalties. They keep a certain page rate, which is pseudo competitive. It's not the best, it's not the worst. And I would keep working with them. I don't have anything against them by any means. I would always continue to work with them. But so I think it moving on to another publisher isn't a bad thing. I think that they've, as a overview, looking back, because I was with them when they launched. I mean, I was the artist that was with the launch. So I've seen it through its entirety. And I would say that they've done a good job with the property. Bringing back the original series was brilliant, and I'm glad that they've done that. And reprinting as much content as they've printed, it's always been of the highest quality of printing. You know what I mean? They've never shortchanged that in any way. If there was anything that I would have loved to have seen change, was just a bit more consistency in the storytelling and a bit more kind of development of this kind of IDW verse. So let A Real American Hero do its thing and keep that on its steady tracks. And that's one thing that I would laud them on, and just say that, like, they've done a great job of just letting Larry Hama do his thing. But the IDW version of it, I just wish there was a bit more consistency and a bit more willingness to do maybe like one-shot graphic novels. Just like let a creative team come in and tell their Joe story, and whether it was a series of volumes or just a one-shot awesome Joe story. Just, we pitched that I don't know how many times, and it just never quite sold with rotating, crew of editors. And I think that was a missed opportunity. That's just my opinion. But so, I mean, it moving on, I think it's just IDW will be fine. They have plenty of other properties and they'll do great. I really enjoy them. But I think where it moves on, I think that's, they can look at, they'll have their own business model. They have their own opinions on how they want to move forward with it. I think hopefully they take what IDW has done well, and then they can kind of look at, if they're going to do a rebooted version of IDW, to keep that separate. And then they, you know what I mean? I have my opinions on, I think, how it could be successful, but I don't know. That's just my overview. I think overall they've done a good job, but as far as when it has dipped or when it's had issues, I think that's my opinion as to why.
I think I'm like you, Tim. Like, I see solicitations and I get excited as a fan, like my wheels are turning, and I'm afraid that sets me up for disappointment. I know I want issue 300 to end on like a double page spread with Hawk talking like arms akimbo, and I don't think that'll happen. I know he's got part of a speech building in my head, but other than that, I think when the first series ended in '94, I think I had been out of G.I. Joe for like 40 issues. I had been a grown-up, a grown-up 14-year-old moving to Image. When it ended, I was like, oh, that's sad. G.I. Joe's over. And then Dark Horse got it. Then Devil's Due got it. So I know that it will never end. This is just a big chapter in the saga of the Hamaverse. And if he writes the way he says he writes, I don't think he knows how issue 300 will end. but I would like to pick his brain and do a little Inception. It'd be cool if it ended like, but I don't know. Do you have a final page in mind?
Is that a question to Tim?
To
or
anybody.
to Larry? Or to...
Dash Solo.
That's one of the interesting things about the letter pages and Larry's responses in the letter pages is that you can kind of follow his longer term sort of thought process sometimes about something. That you'll see it in the letter page, and then over the course of a few months, some of those things that kind of maybe prompted by letters or maybe just sort of percolating sort of start to play out. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm a bit bummed out that we haven't had letters pages for the last few issues, is because we're not getting some of that little insight about how Larry's feeling, responding to some of those ideas and how he's feeling about the things that are percolating that we might see play out.
I was really hoping he'd come to Joe Lanta in Atlanta, like in March, and he didn't. I think he hasn't since COVID started. But I thought, hey, we worked together on that one issue. Let's chat.
Give it.
I've got a new picture for you.
Yeah.
Give it 6 months. I bet he was doing some conventions. In the spring of 22. I bet he'll wend his way your way next year.
Right.
In terms of how I think the series is going to wrap up, I think there are only 2 or 3 ways a G.I. Joe series can wrap up. So I think anyone who's read a bunch of issues can sort of guess. And I don't mean that to be mysterious. I don't say that to sound smart. I think sort of any think of Batman, right? Like, I know this sounds crazy, but imagine Batman was wrapping up in 6 months, like Batman and Detective and all the spinoffs, and DC was going to relaunch it after 6 months later after taking a break, or like IDW was going to license it, right? It's like there are actually only 2 or 3 endings to the Batman story, knowing that there are definitely or very likely more Batman comics coming after, like you can have sort of a definitive ending, you can have a somewhat open-ended ending, but it's like, well, it's not going to end with everyone dying.
Right. Right.
I don't think it's going to end with lots of characters dying, or maybe anyone. So, and almost every ongoing series that ends, some things get wrapped up and some things don't. It's like the analog is Nth Man, which was gonna run 24 issues until it wasn't, and so Hama wrapped up everything he could. He wrapped up all the main stuff, but everything got truncated. Right?
Okay.
And so, because Nth Man was pitched as a novel for comics, as a 24 issue. It's like a novel length comic story.
And it made it 12.
Made it 16. Sales weren't
16.
great.
Okay.
Right. And so, there were 10 issues left or 6 issues left when the call was made. So, it's like, I remember, was it the 3rd to last episode of Lost? Someone gets on a plane. Yeah. One of the main characters gets on a plane and they say, I'm going to the island. I'm not giving anything away if you haven't watched Lost. They say, I'm going to the island. And I thought, cool, this person's going to the island, going back to the island. And on the plane are 3 other people, actually including an actor who was in G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra. And I said, hey, it's the guy who plays Breaker in G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra. And the main guy is like, oh, what are you doing? He's like, I'm on this plane. I'm like, wait, why are you talking? Don't introduce a new character 2 weeks before the finale. Like, cut back to the island and show me how everyone's doing. Right. And then this character talks to the other 2 people on the plane. And I thought, there's no time. There's no time for this. It's like, did someone tell this writer that there were 6 more episodes? There are 2.
Gosh. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I know Larry. I mean, he's always stood by the way that he writes. As much as he says he doesn't plan ahead. I mean, he's got to have. You can only write that way so much. You know what I mean? You have to have a general idea. Obviously,
right.
to to have some kind of context or outline. I understand not writing out a very specific outline, but you have to have a plan. You know how many issues you have left. You have a general arc that you have to build, even if it doesn't pace out exactly the way you expect, or everything doesn't fall into place the way you expect. But I would guess he has a general ending in mind, even if this last arc kind of wraps in a slightly different way, or if it doesn't pace out exactly the way he planned. I would guess it's fluid like that, but he does have an idea, I would assume.
Yeah, an idea in mind, but
Yeah.
getting there, or even the destination, might change as you progress through it. But finding your way. Cool. Oh, a couple of comments come in. So
getting ready.
Thanks
Cover up my arms. Oh.
Thanks for mentioning the letters pages. I miss them too. Yeah. We've been yammering on for a little while, and I'm sure you've got things to get on with in your day. So thanks so much for joining us and spending the time and finding out more about the process for this very special issue. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation too. So, Robert, where can people go to if they want to find you, and what things should they be checking out at the moment?
Just Robert Atkins art on all my kind of social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and generally, again, like I said, I've been working with Renegade Game Studios on their board games, deck building games, and role playing games. I'm working on a few other projects, and on Elders of the Runestone is a co-created comic book I have with the volume 1 came out this last December. We're just running a couple small Kickstarters for just kind of merchandise and supplementary things, and then we'll have volume 2 come out this next year. And which at this point I'm more of like an art director role, and just kind of helping with that project. And then this summer going to Joe Fest, which I'm really excited about. We'll be in Augusta again, and I'll probably be doing a lot more conventions this year, just through SCAD, which I teach at Savannah College of Art and Design. So I kind of represent the department when I go to a lot of conventions. So I'll be at C2E2 in August, at Dragon Con in Atlanta in September, and probably New York Comic Con in October. So I'll be doing those.
And Billy, if people search really hard, they can find your blog online. Billy Penn's plot developments, which I
haven't updated since January, but now I'm going to have to. Yeah.
And you can find the one word posts that like oof, and but within that, within the madness is some really cool stuff as well. If you navigate around some like the Tom Waltz piece and the Larry Hama caricatures and all of those kind of things. But where else can people find you, and what else should people be searching out?
I really don't have anything at the moment. I just wrapped up year 20 of teaching elementary school on Wednesday, and I'm making the jump to middle school after 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
So not college level yet, but middle school. So I think this summer my brain's just going to be working on new curriculum. So that's an exciting change. Yeah.
So I think if people want to see your work, they have to be in 7th grade and go to your school. I think that's what Mark is fishing for.
Yeah, they will be taking course request changes up until August if you guys want to enroll.
And probably in the most recent trade paperback collection as well, they can find the issue that you did of ARAH. Back to Cobra Island and the Cobra Casino, which is an important plot development of the ongoing series. So we get to see S.L. Gallant follow up on some of the foundations that you laid in that issue, which is very cool to see.
I got a big kick out of seeing the two brainwave scanners next to each other, and I'm like, I know that room. I've been there.
Yeah, it's the Jurassic Park kitchen.
Right.
Tim, and where can people find you?
My brick and mortar shop is Hub Comics in Somerville, Massachusetts. If that sounds like a faraway suburb of Boston, it is 4 subway stops out of Boston. So we're kind of in Boston. And my blog is arealamericanbook.com,
where you can find all of Tim's initial insights about the very book that we've been discussing, with a post to come today, apparently. So if you're brave enough, you can join Tim in our outro, which goes, remember, we've been Talking Joe, but
nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast
with 3 guys out there in the States and 1 guy who is not. Thanks for joining us again, guys, and catch you next time.
All right.